So a lot of the younger feminists, for example, at the abortion funds, no longer want to use the word woman in relation to abortion because it excludes trans men. And
right, because when we're talking about reproductive, the physical attributes that allow one to give birth, right, that is part of the category that is sex. Right? That's a physical category. That's not gender.
Right. So there's been this kind of move to remove the word woman from a lot of language around abortion funds.
All right, folks, you should have seen the expressions on the face of our panelists while they were hearing that. For the first time, I sprung it on them. I said, I'm going to throw you a curve, but they can handle it, I know, because they're 300 hitters. Brad Hirschfield, author of You Don't Have to Be Wrong for Me to Be Right, and president of CLAL. And Adam Thompson, senior partner and owner of the law offices of Adam M. Thompson, criminal defense attorney, syndicated talk host. All right, because I did see your face, Brad, more than Adam's kind of contort. So they're saying in the wake of this Bruce Jenner thing, which I guess they think is now commonplace, the abortion movement is looking to drop the woman word because it leaves out trans men. Now, pardon my ignorance, how many men who become women are getting pregnant and having abortions? I'm so confused, I can't even tell you.
Well, I think you're right to be confused, and I think what you really saw in that clip was people getting into the weeds in terrible and silly ways. And that's really the issue. This isn't even now long about who's transsexual, who you're born which way, because what we do know is the categories of both sex and gender are more fluid than we could have ever possibly imagined as recently as 20, 30, 40 years ago. But when you start running away from language because no one word captures everything, things have no meaning whatsoever. What I would say is use any language you want and then appreciate that how people fit into that category may surprise you.
All right, what he's trying to say, and this is my interpretation, is that broad is nuts. Okay? And I don't know any other way around it, Adam, and I'm sure you won't shy away from that interpretation if you agree with me.
Hey, you know me, I don't hold back, so let me just make it real clear and real simple. This is insane, okay? No, this is just pure madness. We're so worried about saying the wrong politically incorrect thing now. We come up with a new name for a new category, for a new thing every other week. This got to stop. It's ridiculous. Women have babies. They're the ones who are getting abortions. Transgender men, I never even heard of one having a baby. This is pure nonsense.
Yeah, all right. I'm glad I wasn't just out there on my own. Let's go to the Clinton story here. And Brad, every day we find out new things about the Clinton Foundation or the Clintons or whatever. The other day Hillary told a young guy, go to the back of the line, and she scolded him twice, and now she's announcing her official launch on Roosevelt Island here in New York City, and they're going to throw a bunch of kids off a scheduled playground event for that deal. She doesn't care. Now the Clinton charity took $10 million, according to the London Daily Mail, a donation from an African church which calls homosexuals devils. Brad?
Well, the first thing we never learned from Hillary is any questions that she's answered, because she's still past 3 weeks and the ticker keeps going. But I will try and answer this one. Look, this is a beautiful story. And I think it's a positive reflection, believe it or not, both Hillary and the church, even though I find myself disagreeing with both of them often. Here's why. The church gave between $1 and $10 million. They're in that bracket. Typically, when you give money to a charity, you're in the bracket, you give it the low end, not the high end. So I'm guessing it's $1 million. They think that homosexual sex is sinful. They believe it is something from the devil. They have compared it to incest. I think it's amazing that they are more committed to health care, which is what the initiative they contributed to. And I actually will give Hillary credit for taking the money from them, even though they disagree. No, here's the thing, Steve. We're going to have to decide. What matters more? No, let me finish.
We can't.
Does ideology matter more or taking care of sick kids?
Okay.
That's our choice.
With the 10% of the donation, they took care of sick kids, maybe. We're coming back. We're not finished with this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're welcoming back the panel, Brad Hirschfield and Adam Thompson. And before we left, I talked about an exclusive from the Daily Mail of London that the Clinton Foundation took up to somewhere between $1 and $10 million from an African church, which calls homosexuals devils. And Brad, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he said he admired that the church gave money to healthcare to help healthcare charity part of the Clinton Foundation, and he admires the Clintons for taking it. Adam, when a Republican presidential candidate speaks at a university that might have once remotely been tied to some kind of segregationist policy, or the founder believed in this, they try to burn alive that candidate for daring to speak at the school. But somehow, this is okay. How is that?
Listen, you know, you can have donors that you don't agree with everything that they're about, and you'll still accept money. That's been happening in politics for forever. But here's something that's very interesting, and I think you're on point with this, Steve. You know, Hillary Clinton just put out a campaign ad where one of the featured parts of it is emphasizing a same-sex couple and same-sex marriage. She's trying to promote how much she's behind this. So it's kind of awkward at the very minimum to accept money and donations from an organization that's saying people that are involved in that same-sex marriage are the devil and they're terrible people. So it's sending out a very bad signal that is money's more important than your ideology and what you honestly believe. You rather take in the bucks than really stand behind what you believe.
Because Brad, instead of saying, I will not take the money from your group, and I will fight your position on homosexuality, instead of saying, oh, sure, give me the money, and then locking your lips and letting them keep preaching the hate against homosexuals, which I'm sure has resulted, I will go out on a limb in Africa, at least in the harming of one person, or at least a hate crime against one person. Why not take that avenue as opposed to just taking the money and shutting up like she does with Saudi Arabia and other groups that treat women like crap, gays like crap, and other people like crap?
Simple. Because this group actually keeps kids in Africa and South Asia alive. And this church, despite its beliefs, understands that their notion of God's love and God's grace is actually at least as big as their understanding that God condemns homosexuality. There's a lot to criticize in the Clinton Foundation, don't get me wrong. But actually, I wish we had people in our House of Representatives and our Senate who would function like these two groups. Proudly tell the world what you believe in, and then understand if there's a kid dying somewhere, that trumps everything.
But Brad, a Republican couldn't get away with that.
And I'd be right there with you to say that's totally unfair to the Republican, and it is totally unfair.
All right, now let's move on. And you are the attorney at the table, Adam. Marilyn Mosby. You know, it's our time. It's I hear you. No justice, no peace. She charged the cops, then she got the indictments for the 6 Baltimore cops, changed some of the charges. She was wrong, apparently, on the knife. She won't let the knife be seen. Now she filed a protective order yesterday that would keep Freddie Gray's autopsy from being made public, and the defense attorneys for the 6 cops are complaining they're not getting what they need to defend these cops. What do you see as the possible motivation behind her wanting to keep the autopsy of Freddie Gray secret?
Well, without having read the autopsy report and reviewed it personally, all I could say is this. When you took the position that you were going to try this case in the press from the very beginning, which is what she did, anything that came out, she tried to comment on. How did he really get injured? Was it by the officers prior to the arrest? Was he actually inside when they gave him the bumpy ride in the police van going back to the station and he hit his head on a bolt? All these different things were thrown into question, and she tried to release information on that. But now we have the autopsy, which is going to be so critical in this case. You would think that if it supports the position of the state and the prosecution,
let it out.
she would release it. Exactly. So it only can make you think that it doesn't support their position, and it will not help them get convictions, and will only muddle the waters more and show contradictory evidence.
Before Brad weighs in, one of the attorneys is saying this prevents his client from getting a fair trial. Could they use this at trial to say, in any way, shape, or form to get the charges dismissed, do you think, Adam?
No, at some point a judge is going to order them to turn over this evidence. They'll get it because they're entitled to have experts review this and give their own opinion.
Brad?
In fact, even this protection that she wants gives full availability to the defense. So the defense is actually as guilty as she is. They would both like to try this in the press. When you stand up and shout, no justice, no peace, into the cameras, as she did, and you look in those cameras and make this a public debate, then you got to see it through and turn this over. Frankly, I think she was wrong when she looked into those cameras and said no justice, no peace. And I think she's probably right to hold back this report. Give everything to both sets of attorneys and let this play out where it belongs.
She's right to hold back the report?
I think she is, for the same reason she was wrong to scream no justice, no peace.
Why?
Because this doesn't belong in the press, period. The court should supervise it. The attorneys for both sides should have full access to everything. What she's seeking wouldn't limit access for the defense attorneys whatsoever.
We're very quickly.
Not gonna
Adam,
happen.
is Brad right? The defense has this autopsy, even though
No,
they
they
say
will.
don't?
They will get
Oh,
it
they
as
will,
part of
but they want it
discovery.
now.
But I agree with Brad. I don't like trying cases in the press.
Right.
Everybody should get the information,
Right.
be able to go through it, and then
Gotcha.
try the case before a jury, not the public in the
Brad
press.
Hirschfield, Adam Thompson, as always, a very spirited debate. Thank you for joining us. Up next, the former governor of Virginia, Jim Gilmore.